Good morning, my name is Stephen Capaldo and it is Tuesday, August 20, 2024. Thank you for listening. Today I'm going to talk a bit about the United Nations and the New World Order. And I have to do that, I have an article I'll be reading from by a fellow named Martin Armstrong, who wrote some interesting things, and I'll read some of those things and comment on those things based on my own experience and insight into that organization. So Martin Armstrong writes, "The United Nations is a serious threat to our future, and not only should the United States withdraw from the UN, it should be thrown out of New York City. The Biden administration refuses to seek peace with Russia and has no intention of negotiating with Russia. That effectively says the UN is just a dog and pony show with no purpose other than to expand its own power, as well as its World Health Organization to create its long-term dream of ruling the entire world." Well, there have been for a long time now. There's been a lot of talk on the inside that the UN is not a very effective organization. If it could be effective, I think it would be in the areas of humanitarian assistance. In crisis areas. People affected by different crises, geopolitical crises, giving them humanitarian assistance would be something they could do, except that when this has been done over the years, there have been a number of sex-related allegations that have come up against certain people associated with the UN. So that really that initiative has lost some of its prestige or luster, whatever you want to call it. And as far as negotiating with Russia, I think that Russia has finally realized that they don't have anyone to negotiate with. And as I've said many times, based on my own observation, is that the older people who are there now, they're the last ones that were willing to negotiate very much. I think the next group of leaders coming in, the next generation or the next group of leaders coming in, will be much less likely to want to negotiate. Be patient and show so much restraint. And I think now you're seeing in some of the headlines is that, Russia has realized that they have nobody to negotiate with. So there's going to be some kind of, as one spokesperson said, there's going to be some kind of, punishment for what has happened most recently in the invasion into the Kursk Oblast, the Kursk district of Russia. So, and then the World Health Organization. The monkeypox or the moneypox, I think that's what it's really going to turn out to be, is the moneypox. And hopefully now people will be aware, and they're just not going to wear masks and accept to be on lockdown and this type of thing. Hopefully now I'm sure there will be more people aware. There probably will still be too many people that are just too willing to go along with everything. But I hope some people learned, and that all of this talk about, there's more COVID now, and now we've got this other pandemic coming, and I think the people that haven't figured that out yet, in this age, probably it's a bit too late for them to figure it out. But all the evidence is there to figure it out if you want to. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, all the information is there. From the very beginning, the United Nations has indulged in self-aggrandizement to elevate itself to the de facto world government. And so as I was saying there are some legitimate things, one of them being humanitarian assistance, which has kind of lost its prestige due to these sex-related allegations, and diplomacy. Diplomacy, like negotiations, like should be happening with Gaza, except the Zionist state of Israel doesn't want to negotiate, should be happening with Ukraine, except NATO and the US don't want to negotiate. But these are the areas in which the UN could be useful, and if they cannot be useful in those areas, well, there are a lot of other people that are just interested in global governance and having the UN involved in different areas in a way that will erode or eliminate the sovereignty of individual nations. And really, each nation should put itself first, but each nation should also make a commitment to live in peace with other nations. There are two things that really need to happen. But to coalesce, to come together into some kind of world governance system, this is going to take freedom away from everybody in the end. They have been a proponent, the UN, of tyranny, even using climate change and health, that they alone should be in charge. yeah, pandemic and climate change. Of course, if you look historically, there are certain periods where the Earth is a little bit warmer or the Earth is a little bit cooler. I mean, these things do happen, but to attribute it to this movement or this situation that has to be administered by a world government. I mean, this is completely abusing the situation, right? This treaty they just proposed is called the Comprehensive International Convention on Countering the Use of Information and Communications Technologies for Criminal Purposes, pretending this is about cyber crime. Still, it is not. It is about censorship. So this is kind of a global censorship program. I mean, depending on what individual country you live in, and I think most of them are the same, and the US is this way, and Canada is this way, and a bunch of them are this way, is that you're heavily, if you don't say the right things, if you say something that contradicts the current narrative, then you are censored. I mean, you're censored. A lot of your views are lost if you have views, and this convention. This is sort of that principle of national censorship, which is applied to the global level. You can't say anything against the global system, or you will be censored. And censorship can lead to other things, can lead to forms of punishment, individual punishment, collective punishment. The UN claims this is the only way to create peace, by putting them in charge of the world. Unelected, of course, they encouraged this war between the West and Russia because they believed that they could emerge as the great peacemaker, and that hasn't happened, which would finally justify their assumption of dominion over the entire world. This power-hungry United Nations approved its first international cybercrime treaty, despite significant objections from all the tech companies and human rights groups. This treaty is highly dangerous and will tear the world apart and further suppress human rights, which is the objective of the United Nations, just as we're witnessing with all of these hate speech crimes and imprisonments for merely criticizing a government, as in Britain and Ireland. See, this is what it is. It's hate speech. It's not about freedom. See, the United Nations is saying that they're offering human rights, which they really are not. They're taking away human rights. And of course, that marginalizes, if not eliminates, the role of the Almighty Creator in being the one who gives us the rights. These freedoms come from God. These freedoms cannot be established or administered by man, and that the UN is saying that they can do this, that they can create and administer human rights. And what they're doing is they're taking away human rights, the rights that are inalienable and given by God. These are the rights that the UN is targeting and trying to control themselves, right? This has been part of the World Economic Forum's 2030 agenda of world domination. Schwab is a control freak, not unlike Joseph Stalin, who launched his Great Purge to silence all his critics. This treaty will authorize electronic surveillance worldwide in the name of criminal investigations. And, I think that you could make a reasonable assumption that this is happening anyway, that this convention is just a way of formalizing it, of making something legitimate or official that is already happening behind the scenes, but happening unofficially. It abandons every fundamental principle of global human rights, including freedom of speech and expression. And once the freedom of speech and expression is gone, I mean, basically, you're in some, you're a prisoner in some way. I mean, if you cannot express what you want to express, and this is what the leaders want. This is what the Matrix wants, the Cabal, is that you should not be able to express what you truly think about different things, because it looks bad for them. It looks bad for them. If you're saying, what they're really up to and what they really want to accomplish, then of course, they can't have this. Well, people don't like to be criticized. Nobody likes to be criticized. But if you are really a decent human being and you have any understanding of the Almighty and the Divine, you know that people have the right to speak. I mean, you can't just take away the individual sovereignty that God has given, the Creator has given to people. You can't just do that and expect that you're going to prosper and that you'll have abundance and all of this. It seeks to establish the most expansive jurisdiction for a crime, to include every kind of speech and expression as that they can, as a crime, just as Britain is seeking to extradite an American for criticizing the new Labour government in Britain. The United Nations, which is totally unelected, is creating this treaty as oppression, fully knowing that the clauses it contains are vague and subject to wide interpretation, allowing countries to come up with their own self-serving interpretations to prosecute anything they call crime that takes place on a computer system internationally. Including even something like this message, what I'm saying now could be considered a crime. If this convention goes through, then legally, officially, they could say, well, this person, Stephen Capaldo, he's saying things, against what we're trying to accomplish. And you can be for or against whatever you want, but saying that you can't speak on that issue, or that if you do speak on that issue, that is a crime, well, to call that a crime is a crime in and of itself, saying that the person cannot speak about the agenda. To prosecute, this allows countries to come up with their own self-serving interpretations to prosecute anything they call a crime that takes place on a computer system internationally. This is intended to silence podcasts worldwide. Governments know they're losing power, and yes, they do. I mean, if you look at the U.S., the current U.S. government is very much afraid of what's going on now. That if there were really an open and full and fair presidential election, I mean, the leaders know, the cabal, the deep state, whatever, they know what would happen if there was really a fair election. And you can say what you want. I mean, the two choices, Republican or Democrat, I mean, these are not great choices. But all I'm saying is, if there were an election, and if it were any kind of a fair election, I think we know the results would not be good for the Democrats. So they know they're losing power. They know people are just sick of them. Sick of them and angry at them. I have warned this, Martin Armstrong, I have warned that historically they will always become authoritarian and tyrannical. Instead of asking why people are becoming angry, they seek to punish them and think that they can intimidate people into being silent economic slaves. A Milan court has ordered a journalist to pay Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni damages of 5,000 euros, 5,400 and something dollars, for making fun of her in a social media post. Free speech is dead. So this journalist made fun of the Prime Minister, who apparently is very popular in Italy. She's kind of the Italian equivalent of Make America Great Again. But a journalist made fun of her, and the journalist had to pay money. So who's suppressing free speech? This is the so-called free speech leader who's saying, well, I should be paid money because somebody made fun of me. So it shows you that this side or that side, it's all part of a scripted reality. It's all part of a part of a game, part of a show. And it's not a very edifying show. Free speech is dead. It's only a matter of time before this UN initiative transforms the world into a prison of economic slaves, denying any right to express an opinion. This cybercrime convention is a deliberate effort to silence the entire world. It is most ironic that China and Russia are the two countries that will refuse to honor this tyrannical decree. And these are the countries that are always accused of suppressing and oppressing and depriving of free speech and this and that. And China and Russia are not going to go along with this idea that you cannot express yourself. And China and Russia have expressed themselves. Russia has been very vocal about what they think of what's going on in NATO and the West, and they've basically decided that they don't have anyone more to negotiate with in the U.S. They can't talk to anyone in the U.S. There's no valid spokesperson to deal with them in the U.S. And so they're being very vocal about that, and so they wouldn't go along with this UN initiative, and they will be criticized for that. And they're always criticized, Russia and China, for not allowing free speech, but I think it's right not to go along with this thing because it will suppress free speech, this UN convention. But it will pass. It will be adopted, and countries will try to, as this author says, will try to adapt it to their self-serving needs, to do what they can to oppress and stop the free speech of their individual citizens and residents. So Russia and China won't honor this. What does that say for Western culture and values? This treaty will now go to the General Assembly's 193 member states. If this unelected body of anti-democratic people accepts it by a mere majority, then it will move to the ratification process, in which individual country governments must sign on. So an international treaty is agreed to, and then each country has to ratify it. Any American representative that agrees to this treaty should be charged with treason, for it violates everything in the Constitution, and there is no authority to surrender the sovereignty to the United Nations and allow foreign countries to extradite for crimes in their country that violate constitutional rights in the United States. Britain is hopeless, for the actions of the police under this new Labour government have sealed the fate of Great Britain to be anything but great. This treaty is truly intended to provide a global legal framework to remove territorial jurisdiction for anything done on a computer. So this is really, it's just open season on any kind of journalism. Journalism itself, I mean, the level and quality of journalism is, it's very sad. Certainly in the U.S., true journalism, true mainstream journalism, it's been dying a slow death, but it started maybe 50 years ago that the freedom of journalism started to die, and now it's just people get paid to just report a bunch of distorted stuff, the stuff that isn't true or only partially true or is confused or is misleading. And there's nothing, I have not heard anything yet on mainstream media. If you look at what's happening in the Middle East, that Israel and Iran are getting ready to fight, and American Airlines has canceled all flights from to and from Israel and the US until April 2025. So American Airlines knows something, and it has been reported a bit, in the alternative media, but I have not heard it reported yet in the mainstream media. Something's happening behind the scenes, and so far it looks like pretty much with all the hoopla at this Democratic National Convention, and other stuff, it looks like the mainstream media just is deliberately ignoring it. I have not heard anything. I mean, if somebody has heard something on any one of the mainstream networks about the Israel-Iran situation and the cancellation of flights to and from Israel, if they've heard something reported by mainstream media, I would like to be made aware of it. I'd like someone to write in or get in touch with me and let me know that, because I have not heard anything about this cancellation of flights due to the situation between Israel and Iran. They pretend to be concerned about cyber attacks when it is about collecting and sharing electronic evidence for serious crimes worldwide that will be fining or imprisoning you because you said Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is short, or she parts her hair on the right side instead of the left, or perhaps that she is attractive, and that is perhaps a lustful statement warning you would like to rape her, etc., etc. This treaty is so vague, it can be twisted into whatever they want. And that's how you control and manipulate, is you leave things open to such interpretation that anyone can interpret anything any way they want. No doubt those in the Biden administration would love this to become law and to surrender our sovereignty to the UN and its World Health Organization, run by Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who is not even a medical doctor. Tedros just declared monkeypox or moneypox in Africa a public health emergency of international concern. I'm sure Bill Gates has his patent vaccines all lined up for a COVID-19 sequel. Biden would love to push the blame on the World Health Organization's declared lockdowns for the election to justify mail-in ballots all over again. So this is what's coming. This is what the cabal or deep state or swamp, whatever, wants to do. And I really think that this time around, don't fall for it. This is don't fall for any of this COVID, the moneypox thing. It's just another way to control. And lockdowns, if masks really, read up on the utility of masks, or that they're not very useful. Lockdowns, no, you shouldn't be locked down. You shouldn't wear a mask. You shouldn't be forced to take shots that you don't want to take. Do your homework, do your research, but be an advocate for your own body, and don't let other people tell you what you need to do for your health, for your body. Listen to the advice, get as much information as you can, but in the end, you are the advocate of your own health, you are the advocate of your own wellness, you are the advocate of your own body. Just read the text of this treaty. There are 0 such safeguards for a free internet. They will expand this to prosecute any criticism of LGBTQ plus community anyone dares to express, along with migrants, as we have just witnessed in Britain. Now, LGBTQ plus, the movement, not the idea of what people do privately, but the idea of a movement targeting children. The plain, vague text allows governments to pass domestic laws that criminalize a broad range of conduct, and as long as it is committed involving a computer, they will point to this treaty to justify the enforcement of tyrannical measures. This treaty will extinguish free speech and basic human rights, for this would even overrule the American Constitution. And these rights are given by God. You know, when man tries to give them, they become distorted, and you see that the UN is in the process of taking them away. And if this convention is adopted and then ratified by individual states, then that right to take rights away is conferred onto each individual country, and each individual country can just make up all kind of charges about, you know, what is criminal speech or hate speech, and if there's any kind of technology involved, you know, phone, laptop, whatever, radio, any kind of media, then, you know, that's a crime and it can be prosecuted. And the prosecutions are left up, you know, how you're prosecuted and what you would get for it is completely left up to the discretion of that nation that has ratified and is now interpreting that UN treaty. In the United States, we have the Sixth Amendment because the king would charge you with a crime and ship you back to England to be put on trial, where an English jury would always find you guilty. Because the alleged crime took place in America, putting you on trial in London meant you could not call a witness for your defense. This is the very same injury to human rights that the UN is seeking to re-establish for what the American Revolution took place. For the fact that it took place. This treaty's adopted text undermines domestic law for human rights safeguards on every level. Under this treaty, there will be no due process of law, which necessitates a fair notice, meaning you must be informed of the law to be guilty, since guilt is an intentional violation of the law. If you never heard of the law, then it is impossible to have knowingly violated the law. You will be denied due process by the treaty, for you will be criminally charged, extradited to some foreign land, and put on trial, which could even be the death penalty for a law you have never heard of in a faraway land. The Constitution also prohibits something called ex post facto law. In other words, I make a left turn on Main Street and then the government passes an illegal law and come after me for that left turn I did a month before you enacted that law. But you could do that. So, under this treaty, you could interpret anything you want, any way you want. So anyway, that's that's really sort of the idea. Welcome to the one world government of absolute tyranny. And then the conclusion of this of Martin Armstrong is the United Nations should be terminated and thrown out of New York City, for it is seeking to overrule our Constitution. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, there will be, just as the League of Nations became the United Nations might become something else someday. And it might well be somewhere else. Any American who participated in this committee and agrees with this in the General Assembly is guilty of treason, violating the very oath of office they have assumed that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not this terrorist organization masquerading as the champion of human rights worldwide. So anyway, that's a little bit about what the United Nations is up to and what could be the implications for the United States and really all countries around the world. So I hope people will be paying attention, you know, when there's the discussions about monkeypox and climate change and free speech and all of these things, you know, lockdowns, masks, vaccinations. When these things come up, and they're almost certain to come up, especially in the run-up to this presidential election, then I hope people will be paying attention and they will be making decisions that will be for freedom and not against freedom, because that's really, you know, God created us as sovereign beings, and that's part of our mission, is to live that way, and, you know, to live in peace and in love with other people as much as it depends on us, but also to make sure that we assert our freedoms, our human dignity and self-worth and sovereignty, personal sovereignty. So I'll stop there, and thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.